The Buffalo Bills move to 3-0 on the season, taking down the Miami Dolphins. This week on the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your host, Justin Goddard.
Bills Mafia, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo FAMBase podcast network. My name is Justin, and I am your host, and we're here to celebrate the Bills moving to 3-0 in a game against Miami that maybe didn't go the way some of us expected. You know, if you listen to the show prior to the game, I kind of expected it to be closer than a lot of us may have thought, just with how bad Miami's looked this season so far. I was expecting like some more variance, some more wild plays, things like that. You know, Miami pulling out all the stops. It ended up being, just a pretty routine competitive game. And, at the end of the day, it's still a win. It's still a division rival, and you still end up winning as a 2-score game. So not too much to complain about. And this is a game that, to me, it felt like the Bills were a little bit more in control than they ever actually were. And I think that kind of just came down to some key moments on offense. And then defensively, talk of the town of how this team wasn't very good defensively in this game. And I guess I kind of have the unpopular opinion of it really wasn't that bad. The problem is and remains third down defense. And we'll kind of get into that more. But if you kind of look at overall how the game went, I mean, Tua 22 for 34, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. Devon Achane, we know how explosive he can be, how game-breaking he can be. 12 carries for 62 yards. I mean, yeah, 5 yards per carry, but that's not like game-changing rushing stats. I think the problem here was, again, third down defense. And this for me is a problem. It's going all the way back to last year. I think we saw, some additions that were in hopes of kind of patching this up, but Bills are able to get the Dolphins into 15 third downs and allowed conversions on 10 of the 15. Not what you want to see. And, maybe it's kind of a different story if, they're all 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. But the Bills, they did do their job of getting the Dolphins into some 3rd and longs, some 3rd and mediums, and didn't really seem to matter. Dolphins were able to convert and keep drives going, and ultimately, we've kind of seen this story before. It's getting into crunch time, and the Bills' defense has been giving up stuff left and right, and when the game's in the balance, they stiffen up. They make a stop or two. Terrel Bernard comes away with the game-sealing interception on Tua, and, the rest is history. And what I would say my favorite part of this game is we continue to see the Bills win in kind of different ways. In week 1, defense couldn't really stop the Ravens. Again, you had some timely plays on defense. But it was kind of an offensive slugfest, and Josh Allen able to keep the offense moving and go blow for blow with the Ravens. Then you move to to week 2. That game was more the defense really shutting down the Jets. I believe they held them to no conversions on 3rd down. And then you get into this game against the Dolphins, and it's kind of a blend of offense and defense and maybe a little bit more of a balanced game on the two sides of the ball. But, you get done with this game and Josh Allen, a super efficient 22 for 28, 213 yards, 3 touchdowns. James Cook, 19 carries, 108 yards. There's kind of like this balance, and I've seen one of the things coming out of this game was just like some discourse around having Josh Allen and not letting him rip the ball all over the field. And that was actually one of my favorite things about this game. And yeah, you have Josh Allen. The fun games are watching him throw for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think this is a conversation we're going to have a lot this year. Just kind of the team being willing to take the profits and take what the defense is giving you. And, they're playing cover 2, they're playing cover 3. They have shell defenses to limit the explosive plays over the top. And that's leading to light boxes for James Cook to run in. Cool. I'll watch that all day. It's leading to Josh Allen, staying on schedule, making good decisions with the football, or protecting the football. And, the more tape that gets put out there for, opponents to be watching in film session that shows Josh Allen being a surgeon, picking apart a defense, James Cook running the ball efficiently all over the place. Teams are going to start moving out of that shell. They're going to have to start playing more in the box. They're going to have to be playing more of the underneath stuff. Then you're going to start putting on film some deep shots. You're going to put on the home run balls. And it's the beauty of how this offense is coming together that you have an absolute unicorn at quarterback who, can rip the ball all over the field if that's how you try to play him. He can be a surgeon and dink and dunk and play an efficient game to beat you up that way too. I already mentioned James Cook, another great game. 108 yards, adds another touchdown. And kind of moving into the offensive weapons, I thought this was a really nicely balanced game for impacts you got from different players. And I mean, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different players that caught a pass from Josh Allen. I'm sorry, 9 different players that caught a pass. We had Jackson Hawes get in the end zone for his first career touchdown. We had Dalton Kincaid leading the charge, 5 receptions on 6 targets, 66 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir had a touchdown. And I thought this was kind of a fun game to watch for, like I said, that more underneath that ball control style of offense of where you want to keep a shell on defense. You want to limit explosive plays down the field. That's fine. We're going to go 12, 13 personnel. We're going to run the ball. We're going to get our tight ends involved, and just kind of the ability to be multiple like that and play in a different game script of, well, we'll play this ball control game. You're going to make a mistake before us. You have Tua. We have Josh Allen. And, this game plan looks a lot better if you get 1, 2 more stops on defense. That the offense is able to convert into even field goals. A big part of that is being able to get off the field on third down. We'll get into that. I will give another shout out to Elijah Moore, continuing to make opportune plays, make the most of his touches when his number is called. And again, not a week where he had a ton of touches. 3 total touches on 4 total opportunities. But again, these touches that he got were opportune touches. They mattered. He made the play when it mattered. And obviously the big one here was, right after the Terrel Bernard interception, Bills get the ball back. They're kind of like in the in-between that they can't just kneel it out. They gotta get a first down or 2 before this game is over. And the first play is a holding. And I'll say it looked like a soft holding call to me, but a 10-yard penalty that stops the clock and starts you out in 1st and 20, 2nd, 16, whatever it ended up being. Point being, not the situation where you want to take a big penalty when, you're hoping that you can keep the clock moving, salt this clock away, finish out the game. And now you're behind the sticks, clock is stopped, and I think it was the very next play, Elijah Moore gets like a little screen pass and able to get the first down, and that's pretty much the end of the game. So continuing to see not like this high volume role, but an impact, the X factor, making plays when making timely, opportune plays that really kind of change the complexion of the game. I'll talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball, and like I said at the top, I think this game is one where it's one of the it's like a long, when you hold the running back to a very low average and then they break like 160-yard touchdown, you're like, well, if you could take that one part of it out, they weren't very good. We obviously can't just ignore the third down defense. It's an issue. But the way I see some people talking about the defense after this game, you would think Miami had, 600 yards and 5 touchdowns, and Josh Allen had to be an alien to come away with a win in this game. And this isn't to say that there wasn't issues in the game. I thought the pass rush looked weak, and kind of in turn, we saw some struggles in the secondary. For me, I think it's gonna be kind of the script, and we're gonna have to get used to it. I said on previous episodes, I'll say it again, I don't expect this defense to be rounding into form until around Thanksgiving time. And it's going to be tough to watch at times until then. But the bright side is we don't have to be sitting here. We don't have to have conversation ahead of the trade deadline of what's Brandon Beane going to do to fix this defense if we're going to make a real run at the Super Bowl. You have built-in reinforcements. Unfortunately, due to, some injuries, some suspensions, you have people coming in that were really projected to be starters on this defense and have a role. And, sitting at 3-0 with the Saints coming up is not the best, or is not the worst spot to be when you've already had to tap into your depth on defense. So I think there is a certain level of, wanting the defense to be better, but also understanding, some of these young players are getting valuable reps. And maybe as we give it a few more weeks, they earn more reps. And maybe it's as we get these players on injury and suspension back into the fold, maybe these young players take on more of a depth role again. And now you've kind of increased the ceiling for them in that depth role. You push them to the back of the pack a little bit. Maybe you're increasing that competition, that, you know, daily trying to get better, to get more reps. And on top of all of that, I think you have a good opportunity to know exactly where all these players are ahead of that deadline. And if it's still something where you feel like you want to make a move, now you have these built-in reinforcements. And we're talking, you know, Ed Oliver coming back, huge player that had, an outstanding week 1 and then ends up injured. You got Ed Oliver coming back. You have Agunjobi in the mix. You have Hoyt. You have Matt Milano out there. You got your first round pick in Max Hairston. You got possibly, and we'll see what happens here, Landon Jackson. This is one leading into, as we head towards these suspensions ending. I think we saw 3 games from Solomon. There's nothing crazy going on there that I think would be keeping you from at least getting a look at Landon Jackson. You gave Solomon 3 games. Let's give Landon Jackson 3 games and see what's there. And I think that's valuable data points to pick up as we kind of get towards White coming back from suspension. And, you're going to have difficult decisions to make. Can you sneak Javon Solomon on the practice squad? Because I don't think you're going to get away with Landon Jackson if you have to move one of these guys off the roster. Is, there a trade coming? AJ Epinesa has been mentioned as a trade candidate going back to last year. I don't know how that's all going to shake out, but what I do know is you have another 3 weeks until that suspension is up. I would like to see Landon Jackson get a game day jersey 2 or 3 of these games just to kind of see where he's at in the action. And then lastly, I'll leave off with Max Hairston. It's kind of this combination of, this week I've seen like the most video out there of him ramping up and doing work in practice. And it's all, rehab type stuff on the sideline, testing out the knee. But that kind of comes on the same day, same week as McDermott dropping a when and if Max comes back. And I don't know why, but when and if to me sounds so much worse than if and when. I know they're the same words said in a different order. I don't like the way McDermott said it. And kind of as soon as Max Hairston got hurt and was put on IR, my belief was that he wasn't going to come back until after the bye, even if he was physically ready to go. They have these time frames that they can play with, and we know how important it is for McDermott and Babich to trust these guys in the scheme, to know where they're going to be, to know their responsibility, doing their 1/11th. And I just think we've seen this with, players that have come into this team, and we want them to make a difference, and they kind of struggle with some of the scheme stuff. And we saw this with, different position, but Derek Forrest this year, Mike Edwards last year, guys that, come in and we have some level of belief that they might be able to take a job, and they're not really finding their way in the system fast enough, and it passes them by. And I think with how much time Max missed during preseason, practice reps, training camp, all that stuff that he missed the time leading up to the season, those that time is super valuable. And, yes, he's been out for, I guess, going on 2 months now, but in that time frame, hey, he's doing some mental reps, but the focus is really on getting that knee right. So, I mean, even if he was, say, physically able to go this week, I still don't see it until, at best, after the bye week. And I'll just say this: I think that there's a very real chance that if Tre White stays healthy and he's continuing to play to this level that he's playing, and I don't think it's this all pro caliber level of Tre White that we've known in the past, but I think he's been playing at like a solid starter level, maybe above average starter level. I think there's a very real chance that unless injury forces their hand, that we might see a redshirt year out of Max Hairston. We'll see. Um, Talked about how much this team values players knowing their role in the scheme, knowing what their 1/11th is, doing that, not allowing big plays. Like, yeah, you can allow catches, but come up and tackle, keep it in front of you. And while I think a player like Hairston can introduce more variance, make you be able to use athleticism to cover ground and maybe get a couple more interceptions, but he also likes to attack the ball. And, you know, maybe you're introducing a variable where he could get gotten on a double move and now you're letting up a big touchdown. And I think they know exactly what they have in Tre White. They know what he has between the ears. I've said it. We'll see what happens. I think even when Hairston comes back, if we have a healthy Tre White, if we have a healthy Christian Benford, I think there's a good chance we don't see a ton from Max Hairston this year. Uh, Not super exciting. If we go all the way back to the draft episodes, I was looking for the team to be able to maybe get somebody with a little bit of a lower ceiling that could be more of an impact player for this year. And, just kind of get a year one impact for a guy that can help take us over the top. We'll see what happens. I think obviously with the team and the recent Kyrie Elam debacle, I think they're very willing to make sure this guy's ready to go before they kind of have him in over his head or anything like that. And that's not fair to make any sort of Hairston to Elam comparisons, but athletic cornerbacks drafted in the late first round, for better or for worse, they're always going to be some sort of parallels drawn there. Maybe I'm wrong on all of this. Maybe Hairston heals up and he's ready to go and immediately gets slotted into the starting lineup. This one's a wait and see for me here. But coming up, we have a 1:00 game with the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, a team that a Super Bowl contender should be looking to take care of pretty easily. I've mentioned this in the past. I think the way McDermott runs this team with his veteran leadership, the way they prepare for games, this is another one that you could talk about with a trap game. Be honest, when your team is the Buffalo Bills and you're a very legitimate Super Bowl contender, a lot of games on the schedule could be the air quotes trap game. I don't see really any path to, a high degree of worry against the Saints. I think they're very much a team in transition. They're dealing with salary cap hell, so they can't really make fast improvements like a team would want to. But it's still an NFL team. Any given Sunday still exists. Really just looking for the Bills to come into this game, play your style of football, wait for some sort of same thing what I said with the Dolphins. The Saints are realistically a team that should have no business being in this football game. So, you might see the screwy things. You might see the extra going for it on fourth downs. You might see a fake punt, end around, flea flicker, things like that. Just play your game, play the full 60 minutes. Bills do that, stay within themselves. We should be talking around this time next week about the Bills being 4-0 and the added bonus of either the Chiefs or the Ravens, moving to 1-3 on the season. So should be a fun weekend for being a Bills fan. We're going to break it all down. We'll talk about it next week. If you made it this far, always love a like, share, subscribe. Helps me out. Helps Jake out. Helps us keep this show coming out. Shout out to Jake for all the work he does on the podcast. Without him, none of these episodes are coming out. Love you, Jake. Thanks for all the help. And that's it for this week. We'll talk to you next week after the Saints game. Until then, and as always, go Bills.